Amazing. Shaarik, I'm going to bring you in on this now because your role is a little different and also complex. So again, there could be a whole conference just on what you're trying to do. So I'm going to ask a broad question of you as well. How do you define a role as special envoy to such a complex and diverse population? I mean, we're talking about Muslim communities.
Right.
How do you even begin to define the Muslim communities as there are 1.6 billion Muslims in the world? So maybe you just could give us your vision for approaching this overwhelming task of being an envoy to this complex world.
Well, sure. Well, first of all, I want to just echo Sean's thanks and for everyone being here. And it's an absolute honor, Madam Secretary, to be here with you. Second, I just want to say on the point of anti-Semitism, and Ira is certainly the expert, but as someone who engages Muslim communities around the world, including in Europe, and it's easy to get dismayed when you see about the rise of anti-Semitism. It's one of those things, even in this country, you look at hate crimes against folks on religious basis, and there's concerns, many in the American Muslim community, about rising hate crimes. According to the Uniform Crime Statistics, which the FBI maintains, when it comes to anti-religious violence in this country, it's still Jews at the very top, right? And so this is something that I'm familiar with. My friends in the Jewish community, we've talked about a lot, and it's easy to get dismayed, particularly what you see from what's coming out from Europe. I will say that there are times when you see positive examples, and I think many of us were hearkened when we saw that really, I think, profound display of interfaith pluralism and harmony when you had Norwegian Muslims joining hands and forming a link around a synagogue. And I think those are the types of things that we need to acknowledge and, frankly, highlight more, because it's very easy to get dismayed. And I think when you have those glimmers of hope, it's important to highlight. Now, the question about engaging 1.6 billion Muslims, Islam.
You may need a staff for this.
Shaarik has 40,000 appointments a day.
It's look. The thing is, 1.6 billion Muslims, and the good news is that by and large, when you talk to Muslims around the world, and they care about the same things. We care about the same things everybody does. It's about a growing economy, a clean environment, peace and security. So there are a number of things where there's, interests are the same between the United States. And of course, the president has said it over and over again. When it comes to Islam and the United States, there's no us or them. It's just us. American Muslims are part of the fabric of this country. So when I showed up, I had this vision, I had this plan of things that I'd like to do, and then I asked, a pretty basic question: well, what does Secretary Kerry care about? And I was told he cares about a lot of different things, but three things towards the top are environment, jobs, and then peace and security. And so I said, okay, well, I guess I care about three things too. And so look, so the way I've crafted my approach is we have to engage broadly. There's enough opportunity on how can we, when we're trying to build a broader coalition to protect the environment, we need to include religious leaders, many of whom, including Muslim religious leaders, believe protecting the environment is an article of faith. So as we reach out and build that global consensus on a whole host of environmental issues, we need to engage religious leaders. When it comes to jobs, in many parts of the Muslim majority world, the population, the majority of the population is under 30, and they're going to need jobs. And guess what? They're not going to be government jobs or even large corporate jobs. So we have to promote entrepreneurship. Now, I make this joke that, USAID and the State Department, we're investing a lot of money in entrepreneurship. Of course, if we knew so much about entrepreneurship, we'd be out making money, But the point remains, we have to do that. And so how can we work into support and start small and medium enterprises? And because, my job is, I engage religious leaders, but I also engage people who happen to be Muslim, and including entrepreneurs. And finally, on countering violent extremism and addressing sectarian strife and things like that, oftentimes it's not about us, right? It's about getting, I may be Muslim, but at the end of the day, I work for the United States Department of State, so my credibility is limited. So how can we empower those people who have a story to tell, whether it's taking on sectarian violence or countering violent extremism? How can we help them tell their stories? because at the end of the day, they're going to have credibility and relevance that many of us in government will not. My view is if we have a broad approach to engaging Muslim communities on the range of issues that they care about and that we care about, that's good because there's all sorts of opportunities. If we only engage on the very specific prism of security, we're going to ignore all these great areas of opportunity. But by the same token, if you have a broad approach to engagement, it makes those very specific, very narrow conversations much more likely to succeed. Because you say, hey, look, today we're talking about the environment, we're talking about jobs. All right, now we need to talk about ISIL.
Well, Shaarik, let me just follow up and say, do you find barriers, though, if you go around the world and the policies of the United States government come up, whether they're understood properly or not, or they hear about what's going on in the United States and whether or not there's kind of rise in Islamophobia in the United States. So do you have a credibility issue I know you're an American Muslim, so that helps in the first place. But beyond that, what are you hearing as you try to engage Muslim communities? Is there a trust problem?
Well, look, there's no question that our policies impact how we're viewed. And that's not just true of Muslims around the world. That's true of, I think, global publics. And so that's, but part of, I think, being a diplomat and our members of our officers around the world do this on a daily basis is, you engage and you explain. And sometimes there's going to be a gulf, right, between what we want and what foreign governments, foreign publics think is the right approach. But just by showing up and having that conversation, I think there's a value. And that's not to diminish the fact that sometimes we have profound differences, right? But I think the task that we've decided to take on is let's try to have that conversation. And then we may disagree on points 1 through 9, but points 10 can be important. The other point I'd say, and this goes back, I started my career in government as the special counsel for post 9/11 backlash, which is a pretty easy job because unless you're a bigot, hate crimes are wrong. You just have to investigate them. Now, sometimes the victim would be Arab or Muslim or Sikh, that looked like me. Sometimes the victim would be Portuguese, right? But somebody thought that, oh, you must be Arab or Muslim. So ignorance combined with bigotry found to be a challenge. I then transitioned to the Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties at the Department of Homeland Security, which is now we're looking inside. How are we treating people at the borders? How are we making sure that people who wear religious garb are treated appropriately? And what I found, and I think this is true in the international context, sometimes there's an issue of policy, and there's sometimes how we're implementing policy. And I remember in my hometown of Houston, Texas, we had this round table with a bunch of American Arab and Muslims, and it was right before the Hajj. And Madam Secretary, you recall this, when we had, I think it was around 2006, this is this transatlantic airline plot to blow up airliners over the Atlantic. And so we instituted this liquid ban, no more than 3 ounces, right? Well, this is right before the Hajj. And so the American Muslim community said, well, look, many of us are going to do pilgrimage. We're going to be dressed in white. And by the way, the Muslims in the audience, when you go to Mecca, you bring back holy water, and other, Zamzam. A lot of times you can imagine somebody spent their entire life saving up for this pilgrimage. It's a deeply spiritual experience. And you come back, you have this jug of water that Muslims revere, and now an official pours it out because it's more than 3 ounces. Now, frankly, I confess, I did not think of that. But what we did is we didn't change security one bit. We didn't change our policies one bit. All we did is we informed our officers about what the Hajj was, and that whether it's, if you're Catholic, you're bringing holy water or any type of holy water, just to tell folks to put it in your luggage. And we got that solution not because, the technocrats figured it out, because we engaged religious actors. And I got to tell you, look, whether it's trying to do vaccination programs in parts of Nigeria or Pakistan, advancing development goals, religion community matters, and so I think that's, there's going to be policy differences and things like that, but just by showing up and having that conversation, I think we can make progress.
Thanks. Sean, I'm going to sneak a question